episode 325 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 6th of April 2025. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Evening.
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Hello.
Let's get straight on with our discoveries then. Will, Frigate. We've talked briefly about this before, but you hadn't tried it at the time, but now you have.
That's right. I said earlier on that I would check it out, and now I have checked it out. But this story has a few twists and turns in it, and so we need to backtrack a little bit. I also bought a mini PC, and I bought an N150-based mini PC so I could flex on Joe with his N100 or N90 or whatever it was. So I bought this N150, and it turns out that in order to use the GPU, which you need for Frigate, you have to run kernel, 6.15 or something, which was only in whatever the current development release of Ubuntu is due, well, any time now, really. So to start with, first of all, I had to download the development release of Ubuntu and stick it on this box. And by the way, it worked fine. So now I have a GPU on an N150. The GPU and the video acceleration and all of that kind of stuff is now available and works fine. So Frigate then is an NVR with a few nice additions on it. An NVR is a network video recorder which will just stream your cameras to disk, and they'll be there locally on your network for when you want to review them. Frigate builds on the idea of an NVR by adding quite a lot of smart, let's say AI-based functionality as well. Its primary goal is just to record your cameras to a disk and spot when something interesting happens and flag that up so that you can review just the changes, just the motion that's happened when you're ready to look at it. It also has the ability to plug into an AI model which runs on a GPU or a TPU, which is a tensor processing unit, which is a little card that you can put in your PC and works better than a GPU, like maybe 10 times better than a GPU, 10 times more efficiently than a GPU at classifying what it sees in those pictures. So I've set up my cameras with ThingGeno, which streams RTSP H.264 video streams, very badly incidentally, but it does it nonetheless. Frigate watches these streams when it sees a certain number of pixels change in a certain region, so you can mask out regions and you can say, with a varying sort of grayscale, you can say what's important and what's not important. When Frigate spots something important, then it starts recording. So you're not constantly filling up your disk with hours and hours of nothing happening. It's only really saving to disk when something relevant is going on.
Is it like a buffer though? Like, does it record from a bit before it spotted the thing?
Good question. Yes, it does, or rather it's configurable. Frigate's config system is very good, and the docs, incidentally, are also very good. One of the options is pre-record and post-record. So let's imagine that you've got a camera set up in your house and it's a hallway, and the front door opens and somebody walks in. You can configure Frigate to say, I want 30 seconds before that happens and 5 minutes afterwards, and it will just do that for you, which is quite a useful feature. So, to join all of these stories together, the N150 that I bought had an M2 slot with a single PCIe channel running a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth card. And I don't want a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth card on this mini PC because I'm plugging into Ethernet and I don't want to use Bluetooth on it. So I removed that and I bought a Coral TPU. And this is where things start getting a bit interesting. The Coral TPUs are a tensor acceleration unit which you put a model on and it will then classify things according to that model. And Frigate comes with a default model which can categorize a limited number of things, including people, cats, dogs, cars, buses, signs, logos.
All the kind of shit that we've been clicking in captures for the last 10 years.
Yes, exactly that. All of that kind of weird shit. Like broccoli is a particularly weird one, but it can tell when there's a picture of broccoli on the screen. So when you tie together this TPU, which, to get back to my original point, slots in the place where this Wi-Fi card was, then Frigate is then able to, at about 100 milliseconds per frame, decide what is in that picture, and then you can get really clever and you can say, if there's movement detected and it's a dog, do nothing. If it's a movement is detected and it's a person, then record to disk. And so now it's able to add these tags to things, and you can start building up these clever models and clever systems whereby you're only really saving stuff that is actually interesting.
Can it do foxes? Because round here, it's just fox central.
Fox. It cannot do a fox. I imagine it will say it was a dog.
Yeah, probably.
It can do zebras. Would that help you?
Yeah. There's in this bit of London, man, so many zebras. And so this Coral TPU card, how much was that then?
Well, this is an interesting story in its own right. $25, which sounds incredibly cheap. Why is it so cheap, you might ask? And the reason is because it's abandonware. In order to get this driver installed on the development version of Ubuntu, it doesn't work. You have to go and find a whole bunch of patches which exist in pull requests on a GitHub project owned by Google, which has been ignored for the last couple of years.
Google.
Yeah.
There we go.
However, there is a community of people who are trying to get this thing working. I've gathered together a lot of the patches into a branch on my GitHub page, which does compile on the latest development release of Ubuntu, and it does still work. And they're not massively complex patches, but they are patches nonetheless. But this thing is super cheap, $25. I think, well, 25 quid, let's say, and it just slots into this spare slot on the PC and uses way less CPU, way less energy to classify these images. So the whole thing is a really neat package, which has got a lot of flexibility and a lot of smarts built in. And the things that you can do with this are really, really clever. And it plugs into Home Assistant incredibly well. It integrates really, really nicely. The weak link in all of this is Thingino, or rather Thingino on my cameras, which are really low powered. It just about manages, but if there's a blip in the network, you get a lot of noise in the video, and that seems to upset things for a little while. But I've got it working. It's more or less stable. The one thing that I really need is an API to enable and disable cameras. For example, I don't need the cameras running while I'm at home and coming and going. I just don't need them on. That feature doesn't exist in Frigate. It has just landed in a feature branch. I think it will be in the next version, but I'm waiting for that to come out before I really start using it. So the whole thing is a really neat system. And if you've got a mini PC and you've got a Wi-Fi card that you don't need, I would recommend getting one of these Coral TPUs just for the sake of 25 quid. It's worth it, and it's quite a lot of fun.
So what we're talking about, 300 or 400 quid all told for a few cameras and all the gear to run it and process it?
I'd say it's less than that. I think the mini PCs are about 160 quid. The TPUs are 25 quid. The cameras, you can get cameras off AliExpress with pan and tilt, not zoom, but pan and tilt, which can be flashed with Thingino for about 5 quid.
Oh, wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, you're probably less than 200 quid. And you could, on a single TPU, you could probably run 4 or 5 cameras, I would say.
Do you trust it, Will?
Not yet.
Is it on its own VLAN?
No, I trust it that it is not doing anything it shouldn't be doing. I trust it that way. Do I trust it that it will catch a burglar? Not so much. But that is more the fault of the cameras than Frigate. Frigate seems to be very stable. I'm running it in a Docker container, and it's easy to install and get set up and running. It seems stable. Once I get this feature where I can switch it on and off without having to kill the entire Docker container, then I'm going to put it in production 24/7, and then we'll see. But yeah, I think it's at least as good as Motion, if not better.
Failing, daylight.
Not a very exciting project, but I did need something to calculate sunset and sunrise times, and I had been using an old library which kind of went the way of the dodo. So looking around, I actually found this, which is more of a command line app than a library, but it's very parsable output if you run it in short mode, and essentially it detects where you are. You can override that, tell it your actual lat long, and it will give you your sunset and sunrise time. And you may say, why do you give a shit about that? And it is because for a very more chunky way of doing it, setting a camera into a night mode or daytime mode, which is ironic that you have all your very fancy fucking TPUs and shit. And I'm going to tell you how to do it the real donkey way, which is I don't trust TPUs or motion or any of those things. So I just record in a massive giant loop, but I do switch the camera into a higher, I don't know what it is. I guess it's amplification of the image to run it in nighttime. And I change the frame rate manually to fractionally less because that gives a bit more time for the sensor to pick up the colors. Now, I do have a Raspberry Pi Model V3 camera, which has not gone out yet. But the other thing I found is the Raspberry Pi pan and tilt module, which is really galling to hear you get those cameras for that fucking cheap price, because I paid 25 quid to get a pan tilt module, but it was actually quite good. I had to hack it a bit because I wanted it to hang down rather than to stand on something. So I had to edit the C code and recompile it. There's a library that they have. It's quite simple. It's straightforward enough. But I effectively swapped around the pan tilt keys. So it was inverting the left and right, I think, because I would have had it upside down and I think it up and down too. So I had to get the right key codes, which at first time didn't actually make sense to me because the cursor keys are different. But eventually got that to work. So that's my new camera setup, because I have it hidden inside a box to stop reflections because it sits behind a window. It's not in a module on its own. And it was a bastard to set up because you were like twiddling it a bit. Oh, no, now it's out of focus. It is. Whereas now I have the autofocus lens, which is very cool, but I need to kind of play with a little bit more. But the pan and tilt module is quite excellent for actually putting the camera where you want it to, or moving it remotely through SSH if I want to as well.
The daylight switching is interesting because Thingino has in it a sampler which looks at the picture and decides how bright it is and whether or not it needs to switch into night mode. So that's quite a nice feature of Thingino. It won't help you, but you're not the only person with this problem.
I actually had a theory about that as well. So I'm using the Pi Noir, which looks a bit weird when you see it in daylight because things are kind of everything's shifted red a bit. I mean, you can use the blue filter they give you with, but I thought, that's going to absorb more light. I want as much light as possible at nighttime, especially. So I'll live with it being slightly red. But there is a thing that's available where you can actually have a splitter for the camera. And I was half tempted to get one of those. So you can then say during daytime use a color Pi camera and then flick over to a Pi Noir at nighttime. So I might do that later on because I've got loads of bloody camera modules in the daylight. It'll be fine with one of the color ones, no hassle.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. Everyone these days has a VPN as a sponsor, but Tailscale isn't like those. This isn't about hiding your browsing habits from coffee shop owners, and it's not about watching Netflix in another country. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices securely. It's great for companies, and it's great for self-hosters. Tailscale gives you secure remote access to any resource anywhere in the world, whether that's databases, servers, Kubernetes, on-prem boxes, virtual private clouds, desktop PCs, 3D printers, or offsite backups in your friend's garage. Connect anything and everything you want, wherever it is, and get started in minutes. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, so support the show and try Tailscale out for free today. You'll get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free at tailscale.com/LNL with no credit card required. That's tailscale.com/LNL. Graham, the visible Zorker.
Okay, so I think a few times I've brought up how much I enjoyed and still enjoy like interactive fiction, like the old games by Infocom, like Zork. And there's a couple of things that I've described for helping you create games like Zork. The visible Zorker is like a real-time debugger or stack tracer for a running Infocom game, Zork in this case. It shows you everything about the state of the engine for the game in the background. So these are text adventures, where you kind of type Go West or Open Postbox. And How they work is fascinating. The language Inform that they were used to program in is unique. It used a virtual machine, and they have this very interesting kind of state system of holding objects and all the attributes that objects have, and the language that describes how you can interact with those objects. I can see that you're going to fade me out now. But the visible Zorker, it's like, I wish you could do this more often with running applications, because it really opens up a whole new world into how this actually works. It's a bit like, developer mode on a website, although that's now become far too complicated. Basically, if you've always wondered how these old classic interactive fiction games work, how they actually appear to provide this kind of natural language interaction with the environment, this will tell you how it works. It's like an IDE, basically, for playing Zork, where you can see everything that's happening and all the state changes as you move through the world and play the game.
I really love the Infocom adventures. I haven't played one properly for many years, but this just seems like another dimension to the game. Although you don't need all of this just to play the game, it does give you that bit of insight, which is just fascinating to see how the machine works. I love it.
Something you found, Will, was Pixel 9 desktop mode. And there's an article we can link to on pocketlint.com. And as the name suggests, you can plug a Pixel 9, in my case a 9 Pro Fold, into a screen and get a kind of desktop mode. Now, the title of this piece is "The Pixel 9's Desktop Mode Offers a Broken but Tantalizing Glimpse of a Future I Want." And I think that is spot on. You basically have to go into developer options and tick a couple of things, and then it works, sort of. It's pretty buggy and half-assed at this point, but it is quite cool to be able to have windowed applications on a big screen. It's the old convergence dream, but it is very buggy. Like, for example, I have to unfold into the tablet mode before I can properly get the mouse to work on the bigger screen. And the second you turn the screen off on the phone, it just totally dies. So that's not very handy. And sometimes you'll just get stuck in an app that's full screen and you just can't get out of it. And the only way is to basically reboot the thing effectively by disconnecting and reconnecting your USB-C dock. But like that article says, it is a kind of tantalizing glimpse into a sort of Samsung DeX-like experience, which I thought that whole thing was dead, but Google apparently are still working on this.
So you need a very specific phone. It just so happens that your phone runs this thing, right?
Yeah, it seems to be the Pixel 9 series that will do it. I don't know. I should try this with my Pixel 7. Maybe it'll work with that. I don't know.
And does it feel better, even though it's broken and even though it's buggy, does it feel better than, for example, the Ubuntu phone desktop experience, if you ever saw videos of that?
I don't know. It's been an awfully long time since I tried that. I think the Ubuntu one was a bit more developed than this is at this stage, to be honest. So it's not very good, basically. But you never know. You never know. It feels very similar to like when we talked about the terminal that's now on the Pixels. Kind of feels like promising but half-baked at this point.
It's starting to look like this is just inevitable now, that your phone will have a very powerful CPU, GPU, and you're going to be plugging it in on a desk. And at some point, you're going to be able to wirelessly connect to a monitor. So why wouldn't you use it to do basic browsing on a big screen when you get somewhere with a big screen? I think this is the dream that everybody had on the Ubuntu phone all those years ago. And I think there's still legs in the idea, and we could get there in the next maybe couple of years.
Shall I crush your dream for you, Will?
Please do.
What this is about is Chromebooks. Chromebooks are going to switch to Android. They're going to kill Chrome OS in the next few years at some point. And so they need to have these features working in Android so that these Chromebooks can just run Android effectively. I think a side bonus of that is that you will be able to do stuff like this with a phone, but I don't think that's the focus. I think it's just development towards an Android-based Chromebook future. I mean, they won't call them Chromebooks probably. Maybe they will, I don't know. But that's what the terminal thing was about, and I think that's what this is about. Phelim, FlightGear new LTS. You're always going on about this FlightGear simulator game thing.
It's not a game. Take that back. It's a simulator, yes. So they had been on 2020.3 for quite a while as the last stable version, and it's now 2024.1.1, which, yes, this is obviously 2025, but that's the way it has gone with the numbering. that is now out. There's preliminary open XR virtual headset stuff available. Almost the new Scenery 3 version is out, which there's some tester stuff for that ready. There's a load of work to be done. It's going to make things higher res, etc. But yeah, if anybody fancies a bit of flying around, check it out. And it's a full open world, so not like a lot of simulators where it's, you know, a window region or a map region that you have to buy or whatever. This is everywhere, and uses OpenStreetMap data as well, so it's quite cool.
You too can pretend to be a pilot like Phelan.
I was talking to somebody today who said that as part of their like winter pilot training, where they're not out flying because the weather's not so good, they were practicing navigating using Microsoft Flight Simulator, where, you know, you assume that all of your electronic gizmos have gone down and all you've got is a map. And so you look out the window and you look down at the ground and you see a particular road layout, let's say, and you have a rough idea, and you look on a map and you work out where you are. Is it good enough to really practice that kind of finding where you are based on landmarks?
I think it definitely will be with version 3. Now, when I often fly it, will fly around Dublin, and if I look at stuff, I can go, oh, look, there's that. And if there is a senior developer who's worked on the region, they might have put in specific things, like there's the spire in the middle of Dublin, there's the new Terminal 2 airport building in Dublin Airport that look pretty unique, whereas you may just generic buildings for other stuff. But I can fly over the area where my house is and actually pick out where my house is. And I go, well, that's actually pretty close. I mean, it doesn't look great because it's not in-depth graphics, but there is a lot of that now. And you definitely would have the ability to do navigation across your larger areas as well. Like, you know, if you're flying from country to country, you could definitely do that. And there's people who do that, and they do multiplayer as well. So
the road networks, for example, which may be the most reliable way of working out where you are, that should all be accurate, right?
Yeah, because that's getting that from OpenStreetMap. And, you know, that has been a recent thing to render that in properly. Yes, absolutely. For some areas where the shorelines have been a bit of an issue, where you'll have, you know, a tidal area doesn't look quite right. Like parts of Dublin are underwater, especially up by the power station, which I know is reclaimed land, but yeah, it definitely isn't underwater most times of the day. So yeah, it's a bit wrong in that area, but yeah. Hey, open project, we'll allow them.
And VR headset support as well.
Yeah, alas, I have not tried it in one. I have not been allowed to have the headset or the use of the son's computer, so that's the end of that for me. But I think this could be quite cool, because I think one of the things that an OpenVR headset is excellent for is vehicle stuff, because, you know, you are seated in that location. Therefore, you can try it out and be seated and safe while you're doing it as well.
Yeah, I think if you have a cockpit, something around you, it really helps with the motion sickness, even if it's, you know, flying through space.
Yeah. So yeah, I essentially have to find a way to get myself a VR headset now.
Well, maybe when the Decades comes out this year, which it will, because that was on my pick, then you can have the spare one.
Excellent.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Entroware. Go to entroware.com. Entroware sells computers with Ubuntu and Ubuntu Mate pre-installed. They've got a range of desktops, laptops, and servers, and most parts are configurable, so you can pick the CPU, RAM, and storage that's right for you. If you can't find exactly what you want, then do contact them, and they'll work with you on a bespoke solution that's perfect for your needs. They ship to the UK, Republic of Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. And if you do buy one of their machines, there's a little drop-down at checkout, and you can select Late Night Linux, so they'll know that we sent you. So go to entroware.com for all your Linux computing needs. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. Graham, bagels, a TUI expense tracker.
For a long time, actually, I used GNU Cash to track all of our family expenses. For years, I'm talking about. So I've fallen out of the habit of doing it. But this is a similar kind of expenses tracker, income and outcome, different accounts, on the command line. And I have to say, I've installed it. It's got the most beautiful text user interface that I've seen. I've not used it properly to track my accounts, but if I was in the same position of really needing to track every penny, or finding pleasure in it, which is actually what I used to do, this looks like a really good tool. It does almost the same things, separate accounts. You can split transactions, which is important. And you can do this all from the command line, which I think has that kind of nerdy attraction that I could see using. You just create an account and then you just add things to it, and you add things to a category. You can see what you're spending on a certain category. It helps you save up for specific targets. And it's got a really nice kind of smooth, slick text-based UI that makes you want to use it. It's excellent. It looks fantastic.
One of the categories is the nature of it, whether you need it or want it. And so, things like public transport, you need that, obviously. But you can tell it's been written by an American because restaurants is need rather than want.
Yeah. Well, it was.
So how do you get your accounting information into this thing? You have to manually add it, do you?
Yeah, it's a manual way of tracking it. Although I briefly looked into this. When I used to use GNU Cache, I used to export my accounts as just a CSV file. And you can import CSV files. So you could do it that way. I don't think there's any better interaction. There's some migration documentation, but I've not looked into what that actually involves. But I think it's more for kind of casual savings and accounts that you might do rather than, for a household.
Well, CSV import seems perfectly usable and reasonable to me.
Yeah, and it worked for us because the great thing about CSV files is that you can process them really easily and you can check them without, going into any needing anything else like a front end to a database or something.
Well, Jesse wrote in with a discovery. He writes, "You've mentioned YTDLP a couple of times. Thought you might be interested in this UI manager called PinchFlat. It's written in Elixir. Would be interested in your thoughts." My thoughts are the installation was Docker and I couldn't be asked, sorry. But it does look cool from the screenshots. But then, do I really need a GUI? Not really for my needs. If I was heavily using it, maybe for some of the other features, but I just generally pull down a YouTube video or something off iPlayer. Don't really need anything more than just YTDLP URL.
The only thing I have to remember is whether it's a dash capital O or lowercase o to rename it, because it thinks that the entire Twitter post should be the title of the video or something.
I use it to stream to MPV from a browser. So I don't ever have to worry about a GUI.
Oh, wow.
Well,
okay.
It's a cute browser, which it's not great at YouTube anyway, but doing it this way happens to skip the ads.
But if you want a GUI for it, this does look comprehensive and well made, so definitely worth checking out. The other day I clicked on the time in the bottom right-hand corner of my XFCE desktop to get the calendar, and for some reason Sunday was the first day of the week. I thought, what is going on? Looked it up. Sure enough, I was set to an American locale. And it turns out that changing that isn't quite as easy as you'd think it'd be. It's only a couple of commands, but you've got to know exactly what to do. And I found a really handy blog post that explained how to do it from Thomas Kren. And I just thought I'd put a link in the show notes, just mostly for my benefit for next time it happens. I must have fucked something up during the installation or something, I don't know, and set it to American. But after I'd done this and rebooted, I think, suddenly, yes, the week started on a Monday like it should do.
Just to make your life easier, there's a simpler way to do it, which is to use sudo dpackage reconfigure locale. And you get a kind of a TUI way of selecting what your language files are and stuff like that. I'm not sure about the days of the week, but yeah. Certainly if you get that error that you often do with, say, apt or whatever on a server where it's not been set right and it starts whinging at you that it doesn't know how to tell you the messages and stuff, that will often fix it as well. But I do like the simple command line fixes that your man has posted in his thing there.
Phelim, KIoT. I read this as Kiot, but it is KIoT.
Well, yeah, this is not one for me, but I'm leaving it as homework for either Will or for Graham, realistically, because it's a KDE app. So it's KDE Internet of Things, and it's a daemon that David Edmondson, who we had last week in the news, who was talking about the login manager, he actually wrote a mini sort of project as a test bed to run a daemon that could talk to things like Home Assistant and the like, to various home automation systems. And yeah, I just thought as an exercise for one of the other two who might have this to try it out and see how well it works.
Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when it'll probably be news and stuff, but we'll have to see. Until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.